While most of us have been watching MLP for quite some time, there may be some of us out there who are just starting to discover the show and the brony fandom. During my review of Sonic Rainboom, I had talked about how that episode was often the first to be shown to those who had never watched MLP before, particularly before Season 2 had started. And personally, I still think that episode holds up really well with each additional viewing. After I had posted that review, though, I got a message from Critters Rule 247 about what would be the best episode in the series to show to a newcomer. And I have to admit that is a very tricky question. There are a great many fantastic episodes throughout MLP and certainly make for some enjoyable exposure. But when it comes to the first episode to show to someone new, I began to wonder, if I could only choose one episode to show, which one would best represent MLP in its entirety? Which episode would give the best representation of the characters, the stories, the animation, the music, and everything else that makes MLP stand out from other shows? Going back to Sonic Rainboom, I began to start analyzing what made this episode a popular choice to show to a non-brony. There are certainly some great moments here, with some over-the-top moments of comedy from Rarity as well as some incredibly adorable moments from Fluttershy, not to mention Rainbow Dash displaying some general awesomeness. The animation is impressive, the music fits very well, and the story has some inspiring moments too. However, you also have some rather cheesy and cliched dialogue from the male Pegasi here, which can actually be a turnoff for those who are just starting to watch MLP. Not to mention you have Rarity being both at her best and at her worst, which I don't think makes for a very good first impression of her character. And there really isn't much to make Twilight, Applejack, or Pinky stand out in this episode either. So I began to think about some other episodes that might make for a good first impression. Of course, you could always start at the beginning with the Nightmare Moon arc. That two-parter does give a good representation of all the main six, as well as bringing an element of adventure with them taking on Nightmare Moon. But again, there are a number of cliché moments here that really don't impress. The animation is good, but not that great compared to many of the later episodes. We do have a musical piece from Pinky, but that really doesn't stand out when compared to the songs that appear in other episodes. There are also a few inconsistencies here that are rather difficult to explain away without having watched the rest of the series first. Next, I thought of Dragonshy, considering that it makes for a good adventure story that ends with confronting a giant dragon. There are certainly some adorable moments here, as well as some epic moments too. And even though the focus is on Fluttershy, I think that this episode gives a fair representation of all of the main six. That is, except for Rainbow Dash, who is shown as being impatient and not the best of a friend to Fluttershy. And I have to admit that even though I think that there are some great moments here, does that mean that someone who is watching the episode for the first time will think that they are equally great? The ending with Fluttershy and the dragon could be seen as incredibly epic or incredibly cringeworthy if you are just starting out watching the show and haven't seen any of these characters before. We have to remember that a lot of people who try to watch MLP for the first time do so with some amount of skepticism behind it. I know that I certainly did. What about Lesson 0? That shows a lot of great character moments for most of the main six. Although Pinkie Pie doesn't get much time to shine here. The episode is especially memorable, particularly with Twilight's mental break. Even the background music tends to stand out here. It makes for a prime example of comedy, character interactions, and even dropping a sonic rainboom on a building. However, some of the most brilliant moments in the episode are only brilliant because we already know these characters. Like, for example, would Fluttershy's moments really have had the same effect if you didn't know anything about her character? As enjoyable and memorable Lesson 0 can be, I'm still not sure about having that as the first episode that you show to a person. So then I began to ask, what aspects of MLP first drew me into watching an episode? Well, the very first episodes I watched was the Return of Harmony two-parter. And I decided to start there because of Discord. I had heard about Discord being voiced by John Delancey, and how he shared many of the same mannerisms and powers as Q from Star Trek TNG. I remember enjoying that character from many years ago, and that helped a lot when I was seeing a very similar character with the same voice on MLP. I was able to find a prior connection to something else I enjoyed, and that helped me to get over my skepticism and try watching a few episodes. And I'm certainly glad that I did, as it turned out that starting there got me to watch the rest of the series several times over. But what do each of you think? Which episode would be the best place to start watching from? For me, I think it comes down to what aspects a person already enjoys from other shows they have seen. That's what made the difference for me, and I think that can make the difference for many others as well. But I'd still like to hear your thoughts about which episode would be the best representation of characters, story, animation, music, comedy, and anything else that makes the show enjoyable. Which episode would you choose to show to someone who is just starting out? Why do you choose that particular one over all the others? I would like to hear your thoughts on this topic, and here's to hoping that we can continue to find more people to enjoy the Brony fandom with. I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.